All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to Wireheads. Now, the reason I say welcome back, this is part 2 of episode 5 of Wireheads. Now, to clarify, if you want to get the full context about what's going to be discussed in this session, in this episode on my channel, go over to Emmerron's channel and please go watch it. There's going to be some important context that Emmerron has given for the upcoming discussion today. Now, also on top of that, we do have an important announcement here at the end of session, and also we do have question time, so please feel free to send in your questions, chat, whenever you're ready. I'm trying to think if there's any other important news I need to give out before we take off. Have I covered all my bases? I think I've covered all my bases.
I think you have. But yeah, again, guys, if you're watching this part first on YouTube later, my episode should be linked down below. So definitely go watch that first part. More than some of the other topics we've discussed in previous weeks, this one benefits from having both sides of the story and the full context in order. So definitely go check that out if you haven't already. But yeah, no, I think you've covered as all the bases I would normally track Diamond, so I think you're good there.
All right, so in Emmerron's half of the episode, for anyone who's still choosing not to go over there and watch it, please do. We talked about encounters and GMs creating them, and also talk about what it takes to create some challenging encounters. One of the topics I thought about, because it's come up time and time again, not only just in Cyberpunk RED, but in other games that I've been reading through and prepping for, is hard choices. Now, to clarify what hard choices is, hard choices are choices that will do one of the three, and for me. It will define a character's decision-making from that point forward in the game. It will impact a character's background or impact the character in a very strong emotional way. And also, finally, neither choice is a good choice. Or both choices have serious consequences, but you can only take one or the other. And when we look at the matter of hard choices are something that should be very plot defining. This is not, simply, what lifestyle are you going with this month? This is very much more, okay, hey, it's the end of the month and it looks like you only have enough for either your lifestyle or your rent. What's it gonna be? Or getting hold up in a very bad position where it's, for example, I suppose my prime example I'll use here. For anybody that follows Team Storm Chaser, we had Tequila, who had an AI riding around, basically more of a net ghost riding around in his brain. And it got to a point where he was given a decision of either A, his girlfriend had to die, and he would be able to continue to function as a normal, capable human, and she would quit having to hang on to what her husk of life is, or basically they can continue to live together in the brain. However, Tequila slowly is going to become basically will lose all motor ability and the ability to speak, literally just being stuck in his head for the rest of his life. So, it's one of those, choices where you have to decide, which do you really want? What's more important to you? And when we look at tough choices in the matter of the way it defines how a character will act going forward, usually these will bounce off the backstory of a character, or it may be the present situation might be enough to have caused a character to have a very different sense of reality.
Yeah, I find that there's a lot of present moment stuff that may not come in your like player's life path. I know I've seen this a lot in my games where and this happens in other games as well. Cyberpunk is certainly not alone in this, but when a player or maybe your whole table even decides we care about a place or a person or something, threatening those things is especially when the consequence of the players choosing to defend or protect those things over whatever other primary objective they've picked out for themselves or have found themselves forced into at that time. If that choice is a trolley problem for them, it's a real dilemma, then whatever follows is bound to be incredibly interesting from a storytelling perspective. And those are the things that kind of arise organically. Like life paths can provide the framework to set them up, but they absolutely don't always pay them off in that same way. Sometimes it is going to be just you seeing and identifying that like, oh, the players really like this group of NPCs that maybe you didn't plan for them to be, you know, big characters or whatever, but they care about them. So what do? Those NPCs become the gate to your players' hearts when you want to stab them there, right? They become the thing you aim at, not the players themselves. And that I think is proven a time-tested tactic for making that work when you want to resonate with your players a bit.
So I suppose in the case of well, Stitch or Snips, and also your guys's oh gosh, I'm trying to remember your guys' solo's name over there in gosh, trying to remember Cody's character.
No, not Hyde. That was last season. Cody's Celsius.
Yeah, Celsius. I knew it started with a C, but it's just like,
yeah,
I have so many solos in groups that start with C. It's just like, which solo is this? But
nope. No, yeah.
You know, like in the case of Snips and Celsius, that's Generation Red. You know,
right.
That is something that, you know, if you put that on the line versus something else that Edge Runner something the Edge Runner cares about versus what the Edge Runner wants, the Edge Runner has to make a choice. What's it gonna be?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Gosh. Oh yes. I suppose you know, another choice was made of like in the case of one of my other groups, finding a certain entity that well, they're basically as close to a replicant as I've introduced into my setting. And
oh yeah, I remember you talking about this.
Oddity.
Yep.
Don't worry, we'll be meeting Oddity soon enough. Soon enough.
Jesus. Why is that threatening? Jesus Christ, that sounds so threatening.
Don't worry, they're safe where they're at right now.
For now.
But you know, for the party, they had to decide: do they keep the bomb chip inside Oddity because they know Oddity isn't quite fully human, or do they remove it and put the replacement chip in that the tech had created, so that way it functioned like the bomb chip, allowing Oddity to continue to live and be autonomous, full knowing that at that point Oddity will have, like, there will be no way to shut off Oddity as soon as Oddity has any serious issues.
Right. Well, and I think to zoom out, so a way you can look at this as well as a GM, like when you want to present your players with like a really difficult scenario or choice that they have to kind of navigate, is think about putting your players in the position that they put some of your NPCs into, like your opposition NPCs, right? If you hit them in a way that they have to fight to the death to protect something and retreat isn't an option, or if one of those choices would be extremely costly for one reason or another, then it really creates the atmosphere you're looking for, I think, when you want to set up the environment in which hard choices start getting made. I think ultimately, if that's what you're after, those are the sorts of things you have to like immediately think about. Is like, what do my players care about the most? And what are the ways in which the current story or their current enemies would seek to manipulate them or take advantage of that fact and exploit that vulnerability that they have.
I suppose in the case of like Blade Runner, for the matter, during Electric Dreams, you guys, I mean, let alone you, Emmerron, you know, you had choices to make where, you know, like Percival was confronted with Styles and found out Styles was the Nexus 8. So you had to decide, would you let, you know, Nexus 8 continue to walk, ignoring your orders from the LAPD to do so, full knowing that if you got caught, that it would be some serious consequences for you.
Right.
Or you did a did the right thing of taking Styles in. Well, I mean, both ways. What really is the right choice? That's actually a better question.
That's I think like that's a great example of like a social hard decision.
And I love
where,
those.
Right, yeah, like because they're the choice with Styles. And again, for those of you who haven't played Electric Dreams and maybe want to in the future or try out Blade Runner, that is a great place to start. So I'll try to avoid spoilers as much as possible for this. But there's value, I think, that someone as intelligent as the character I was playing, Percival, would recognize to leaving someone like that untouched on the streets. Because now they owe you for turning the blind eye. So as long as you're able to like leverage that over them and they don't see that as something they can like just deflect, or you as someone weak enough that they could just deal with you and move on, that's where we start seeing like some very interesting, like you're leveraging your soft power. Where it's not power from the end of a gun, but it's that like I'm letting you live and I'm doing that against my orders and maybe some degree of better judgment. And when the time comes, I expect that you'll show me gratitude for what I've given you here today. And that's something that I think a lot of GMs maybe overlook when they're first trying to build things. Is you're trying to make things big, loud, and splashy. And so the first thought when you're trying to decide how to really challenge your players when that first time happens, you might be tempted to just reach for the biggest stick you can find and just wallop your players with it. I promise you two things will happen when you do that. Number one is that stick will not land nearly as precisely as you're hoping it will. It is not a precision guided missile. It is indeed a very large, it's a very large, cumbersome stick that you're swinging at them, and they will get out of the way of it. Or if it does connect, it will not connect in a way that is interesting with your players, right? Even if it hits them hard. Unless that stick has some personal connection to the scenario at hand, it will not be landing in an interesting way to develop the characters or the story or anything around that, right? And I also will say the second effect you'll see come out of that typically is that your players will gain that stick. If you give them the opportunity to take it, they will get the stick. And now you're in an arms race against your players, which is not a great position to be in as a GM. Trust me. Like I've had campaigns where that became the situation at hand. Being in an arms race with your table is not what you want to have happen ever. The consequences of that are that you will ever be racing against your players, and you will be frustrated, and they will never truly feel that challenge unless you are very skillful at digging yourself out of that hole. But it's a hole that digs itself very quickly and very deeply. So you have to be like extremely careful when you examine what to confront your players with in that regard.
All right. So yeah, in the matter of like hard choices, usually for me, like when I look at hard choices, the best way I have found to present them is always like, sure, you know, some problems you can solve with a gun and a lot of fucking willpower. I like the ones where you can't just simply shoot the problem away. You can't just simply money the problem away. Suddenly, that problem is latched onto you, and you have to figure out how to deal with this. Gosh, I suppose one of the best predicaments I've seen a player put themselves into. So, actually, this is for our Thursday group where the med tech who had normally been attending to the executive rocker boy who is a wrestler for the corpse, the med tech has just signed himself over to Rockland's medical services, and now, turning back on the people that provided him everything that he needed to get a leg up in life, he's now made an enemy out of those people. And this is just not simply a problem you can money or gun away, because killing off one of the city's med techs who do good work for the people, in spite of trauma team and all the other groups. Like, how do you do that and not piss off the entire city?
Right.
Like, gosh, I'm trying to think like what kind of other scenarios would present that. Like, if you knock over the balance of the city, suddenly there is no turning that around. Say, for example, you kill. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. Oh, give me some high ranking or like some power player in Night City.
Rogue.
Okay, so say Rogue is killed during the time of the Red. Suddenly, you have every afterlife merc looking for you. Not only that, you have every merc who was wanting to get into the afterlife, who has had their chance blown, looking for you. And also, of course, because I imagine they are on good terms with each other, the Forlorn Hope is probably not too happy about a major edge runner being killed as well. You piss off an entire community of edge runners if you kill off, power players like her. And also, all those big connections you could have made, gone.
Yep. No, it's very true. I mean, if you burn a bridge in Night City, if it's a big bridge, that's a problem.
Wood chipper.
Wood chipper is another really good. Yeah, like
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you burn wood chipper, ultimately you're burning your relationship with pretty much every friendly nomad pack in the Badlands, because she kind of runs negotiations for, like, she is an Aldecaldo, but so many of the other nomad packs come to her for a negotiation that, like, it's a joke if you've already burned your bridge with her, because she won't take you seriously ever again. And that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is just like any other powerful fixer. She'll deal with you as a problem. And problems usually get removed in Night City. They don't survive very long.
Gaster, in the matter of killing Mr. K, you've created a power vacuum, and let's say you kill Mr. K, all right? So Danger Gal is contracted by Mr. K to watch over his night markets. Suddenly, Danger Gal doesn't have a big time contract anymore. So, you've just messed with Danger Gal's pocketbook. Other fixers who get their stuff from Mr. K, you have pretty much cut off their lifeline to those high dollar items. And then, of course, anyone who Mr. K deals with outside of Night City or in Night City that you don't know about, who has found out that you killed their fixer, congratulations! You have pissed off the wealthiest, the Fortune 500 of Night City. I hope you have a nice funeral, because it's probably going to be at the bottom of Morro Bay in a nice concrete slab.
Yep. Like, messing with big name fixers is no joke, because remember, especially in the time of the Red, more than any other time in Cyberpunk's timeline so far, fixers are the biggest power players the city has. Like, corporations, their power is like diminished to such a degree. They don't have their global assets in the way they do in 2020 or 2077. And fixers and nomads are the way that those people stay connected. So if you threaten a fixer, what you're threatening is the fabric of society.
And that's a choice that you need to be able to stand by as soon as you make it.
Yep. Because if you can't stand by it, like Diamond said, concrete slab for you, bottom of the bay, that's over. Night, you're flatlined. It's over. But yeah, it's really like, those are the things that you should be thinking about as a GM. When like your players do something, there was a question submitted in my chat that we'll come to in Q&A because I do want to save it for that. But the first thing that you should be thinking of is, if the players make a choice, even one that surprises you as a GM, if that choice has that kind of magnitude that they've fucked with the norms of the city, the people that drive it, or the lifeblood that carries it and keeps it alive, the first thing that's going to happen to those players are all the knock-on effects of them messing with the flow of things in Night City, right? And that can be that can be extremely serious. There's actually an adventure in Tales of the Red, Street Stories, that kind of examines exactly what this looks like.
Actually, is that Haven't Got a Stitch to Wear?
It is.
That one, yep.
It's a fantastic, like, for those GMs out there who want something templated on paper to see, or pre-written to see what this is like or how this is built. Haven't Got a Stitch to Wear is probably the premier example of what that looks like. If I had to give you one thing to look at out of all of the stuff we've gotten so far.
Now, on the other hand, though, like, if we really look at like smaller scale, like tough choices to make, sometimes it comes down to players having to make that decision when they are looking at a job. Sure, it's high fucking payout. It is 2,000 eddies that could be in your pocket, but you have to understand that you're probably someone might die because of those 2,000 eddies. Do you take the job or not?
Well, and it's also bear in mind that you have to consider as well, and this is again like an element behind the scenes that you want to weigh out as a GM when you're kind of planning things, is what are the knock-on effects of the players succeeding at the job that's been placed in front of them. Like, victory isn't binary, right? It's not a yes or no. It is okay, you won, but what happens as a result of that victory, right? Or you lost, what has changed because you lost, right? has someone's position, like the fixer you were working for, is their position somehow worsened now? Or is your loss actually a good thing? Because your loss means that a group of people will not go hungry because the gig was to deal with thieves of a convoy, and you only found out after you accepted the job. The convoy was carrying food. The people that took it were starving. What is good or winning in that context, right? Victory is not a black and white binary yes or no decision. It is a, what am I willing to put on my conscience, or what kind of target am I okay with being on my back at the other side of this, knowing what one decision means for the other side of this discussion. Because there are different ways, I think, even different groups. Like, there's one thing I learned through my boot camp when I ran a bunch of free games a few months ago. It was that two groups can come in the same adventure, given the same information, and they can walk out with totally different outcomes, totally different perspectives, and wind up in two different regards with the corporation that put them on that path, right? One can end up where, like, yeah, we love the way you resolve this, we'll call you again if we have more work. And the other can be, you're now on our, not even just our shit list, you're on our most wanted list. We will hunt you to the ends of the earth, and we will not rest until you are flatlined or brought before us so we can figure out why and how you did what you did to us, right? Like, that isn't hyperbole. That is literally a way that I've seen an adventure resolved two different ways based on the choices that the players made with their hiring contract and stuff like that. So it's very interesting when you get down to the nitty-gritty of that.
I suppose for me, something I've looked at, one of my favorite things to look at when people make hard choices is the time pressure. Emmerron has talked about time pressure. Mm-hmm. You only get a month. You know, like roughly 4 weeks or 30 days from rent to make rent. But suddenly now, hey, you got yourself busted up, and you can't afford a hospital bill, and there's nobody that's willing to help you out there. Do you continue on that next job while you're still injured? Or in the case of a tech, do you sit down for 2 weeks and work on that 1,000 eddy item? Do you give up a whole month to build that Militech Perseus? That's actually like some of the other choices that I've looked at, where I've had players, have to decide, how do I want to spend this time? Because you can either do one or the other. You cannot do both.
Right. Well, and on the other side of this is because I kind of lost the point in what I was saying. So to come back to, when you take that 2,000 eddy job and you piss someone off, there's a very real possibility that on the other side of that, you have to lay low for one reason or another, right? Like, even if you do the job as prescribed to you, right? Think the Konpeki heist in 2077, and you've got a pretty good idea of what this looks like, right? Because, like, on the other end of 3-4 weeks, no one's really concerned about V anymore, right? The problems of the Konpeki heist have kind of faded into the background for all but a few people, namely like V themselves, obviously, but also Takemura and some of the associates of his that are now hunting for not only V, but him as well, because of his suspected involvement in what happens in the Konpeki Tower heist, why that goes south, right? So don't be afraid of telling your players, like, you recognize that on the other side of what you've just done, there are people looking for you, and that it might be prudent to lie low and maybe not in the places that you normally call home, right? You're not going to go back to your cargo container, your Conapt, after you pull this massive data heist off or whatever, because to do so would be to risk you taking your opposition home with you, right? You walk the enemy back to where you sleep. So instead, you choose to lay low in that shady motel on the edge of the city, or in that half run down brothel somewhere deep in a combat zone, right? Those are the spots where you go and lie low and you wait for shit to blow over. And that is another very real element that, like, if your players don't consider that going into a gig, then on the other side of one, when they come back out, they will have learned, oh shit, like, the next time we do something like this, I've got to be more careful that the cams don't catch my face, that we don't leave any traces behind, or at the bare minimum, that on the other side of the heist, I've got my little hidey hole scoped out and I know how I'm getting there. Because to do anything else is going to be at best an uphill battle and at worst my funeral.
Mark of Corn, what about when your fellow edge runner's life path collides with a gig? Yeah, sometimes maybe your goals and morals conflict with what the gig's actually all about. I've actually had that come up with a player where, you know, one of their things is, you know, really sticking up for their community at home, but suddenly, you know, this exec is wanting you to, you know, deliver a package. That package, the party came to realize later, despite it being all sealed up, it turned out it was a nice little structured demolitions device that was just supposed to be delivered to an apartment complex to evict the squatters. And, well, the party now had to decide what to do with it, because if anybody took if the person that was given the bag took their hand off the bag, it was 5 minutes till that thing detonates.
Good old dead man switch. Such a elegant problem.
But yeah. Oh. I guess another
thing. And I think to talk to that a little bit, because this is definitely a question I think is pertinent to what we're talking about. If edge runners don't agree on, or their life paths would lead them into a mode of thinking that doesn't agree on a single solution, that is by itself very interesting, right? And a lot of the time, you as the GM aren't responsible for solving that, the players are. So when the players are all presented with, here are the facts of the situation, here's the scenario, we then have we have ourselves a little quandary that then needs resolving. And sometimes there is a level upon which the players can settle where those differences are minimized, and the compromise that you arrive at in between is good enough, right? And for minor hitches, that is fine. But what Diamond has presented to, like, one of my characters, for example, in one of her games, is unknowingly a gun that fell into our lap and that he consequently took to his boss to, like, have him look at it and say, hey, we could learn a lot from examining this thing. And I don't think anyone's going to come looking for it because it was in the hands of some random booster ganger in South Night City. Like, it wasn't like I took it off a Corpo transport, and it wasn't like the guy carrying it had a Corpo uniform. It was a random iron sight ganger in South Night City, far as hell from Militech's base. That's why I take the gun to them. It seems like, I'm an exec. That's what you do. You take it, you deliver it, and you get a fat bonus. And man, I love that fat bonus. Right up until my neighbors changed.
Oh, hey, neighbor.
And it's a husband, wife working for Militech. And I found bugs, the recording kind, not the creepy crawly kind, in my fridge that were trying to record what I said and did. I had some dude come along who knew what had happened, who I consequently rapidly departed from this mortal coil, stole all his phones, had my Netrunner employee hack all of them, and dig the information out so that I could rest assured what exactly the battlefield I was about to fight on was. And so all of a sudden, this like nothing decision I made has turned into the focal point of like, I could drag the party into this shit deep with me, and there could very well come a point in the future here. And I'm sure Diamond is all too happy to know what that is, and not tell me in the process, that we could all get dragged into a war with Militech over this decision that I didn't know I was making at the time, right? There was a easy win on the table that has turned into a potential major loss down the road. And everything we do between now and then is going to define how and when that fight comes to our door, because it will come. Like that is an assurance. That's not a possibility. It's an eventuality.
Don't worry, it's happened.
You're right. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Again, like I said, she's all too happy to just like, I know what's happening and you don't. I'm hearing it.
You got a nice house.
You're way too smug when you say that, you know, Diamonds. Jesus Christ. Bottom line is, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. What's your bottom line?
Yeah, bottom line is, even the little decisions can become big problems given enough time, and they can turn into those two big conflicts that your players can't just compromise their way out of. Because the problem I have is a corporate problem, and it's not an edge runner problem. And the crew I run with are all edge runners. No one but me answers to a corporation at the end of the day. So if the rest of the edge runner crew decides that their answer to that is leave Larry to just hang and dry, like that, I don't have any recourse there to say that they're wrong. Like, is Larry gonna maybe hunt them down later then? Maybe, because he's gone to their aid in their time of need. So he can only hope that that's enough to have them do the same for him when the time comes. But like, there's a very real possibility of the players looking at me and just saying, sorry, bro, you're on your own. Like,
I don't know about that crew if they're gonna leave you hanging. I doubt they will.
The point is though that it's not an unwise decision given the choice against it, right? Like the other option on the table for them is war with one of the largest corporations in the city and the world. Like it is a dangerous situation to be in. And if you don't have skin in that game directly, like Larry very much does now, like is it really smart to put your skin against that game? I don't know. Like that's what I'm talking about though. It becomes like my hard decisions now are going to become the crew's as time progresses, and we're all gonna have to make some difficult choices at that point.
Well, on top of that, one of the other things that I like in hard choices, it's cutting your losses.
Yep.
Sometimes you have to figure out what is really worth hanging on to. And in the case of, for example, like Dia, we had finally reached the end of Tales of the Red Street stories. and Dia had been dragged through the shit and, losing her crew at the end of like halfway through that campaign. And then finally at the end of the last arc, or at the end of the last story in Tales of the Red, she was left with 10 humanity, 1 empathy, and 10 hit points left. She had to look at this crew who kept making reckless decisions after reckless decisions, nearly killing, a child in the process. And just finally said, you know what, fuck this, I can't do this anymore. And, sure, it was the end of campaign, but pretty much it was me finally deciding that it was time to retire Dia for a time. Now she's out of retirement, off to Rapid City, South Dakota. Thanks, Mischief. But sometimes your edge runners have to look and decide, is my life really worth the 1,000 eds that the fixer's willing to pay me for this cargo that is being transported, or was I taken for a ride?
Mm-hmm.
Or is this beef really worth trying to settle right here in the middle of the slammer when I know that more Maelstrom are more than happy to come piling over the edges to come fight me afterwards?
Yet again, there's another great story in Tales of the Red, actually, that I think does a great job, again, kind of illustrating what that looks like, where you aren't hired by the fixer in this case, but you see what happens when a fixer only provides a group with half of the information and leaves part of the story to themselves. Diamond, you'll know it's Staying Vigilant is the one I'm talking about. But the whole idea of a fixer maybe not directly selling you out so much as feeding you only half the story so they can justify paying you less, that's another very real obstacle. And when your players learn that they're the ones that's happened to, what do they do about it, right? Or what do they do when they learn that there's the fixer created part of the problem that they've been hired to go solve, and conveniently the fixer left that out of their briefing, right? I've done that too to my players, where they went to this drug dealing den in Rancho Coronado and found that it had been overtaken by this horrific biological monstrosity, basically straight out of a horror film, and they came to learn that their fixer that hired them on to deal with this had a hand in why this happened to begin with. So what do you do with that information? How do you leverage that, or what comes next? Because some groups might leap straight to, the fixer's next on my hit list. I'm straight up gonna murder the guy for putting me through this. The other is, I'm going to negotiate they double my rate, right? Whatever they were gonna pay me, double it, or even in some cases triple it, because you and I both know what you just asked me to do was not worth what you signed me on for, and you and I both know that you kept quiet about parts of it to make that seem appealing. So you give me more and I keep my mouth shut, or else the whole city gets to hear what a fucking loser, Firestorm of the fucking Atlantis is, right? And it's one of those things where the bargaining table then opens up, and your players get to see okay, what does it look like when I negotiate in my own best interest against someone who is powerful enough to maybe counter that with their reputation alone. Again, all of this leads to hard choices. Some of that is you maybe don't get a chance to even resolve it until 7, 8 sessions deeper down the road, when the players finally have the means, reputation, and in some cases even the evidence to like support their claim against the people that sold them out.
Sorry, I'm recording some questions that got sent to me on Discord here.
No, totally, absolutely. I should probably double check mine as well, just to be sure. Yeah, no, I'm clear at least on that front. But yeah, ultimately, hard choices are like they're about making some of the little things, the seemingly inconsequential decisions your players make along the way, pay off in a big way down the road. I know in Neon Inferno, there have been multiple cases where that's happened. The most recent kind of episode, or last couple episodes, kind of like culminating some of that. We see this biochemical monstrosity born of a drug tech that was one of the player characters in the party. We see that the things he's made and how those kind of work their way out into the wider city, they've come back to kind of bite the party in the ass now. They're getting those same things used against them. And where that buck ends, we haven't seen the end of it yet. But we know that these like little decisions of, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I invented smoke grenades that widely administered blue glass to a room of people? Wouldn't that be neat? And me as GM smiling, knowing in the back of my mind, yeah, this is one of those little things that's going to come bite you in the ass a couple episodes in. Says, oh yeah, that'd be awesome. Lo and behold, a dozen or so episodes in, and it's bitten them in the ass, and now that drug tech is dead.
Well, it's been a good solid 45 minutes. And I think I've covered everything I want on hard choices. But at the end of the line, for me, to kind of round out this part of the episode before we go to question time, hard choices need to have a very substantial amount of impact on the players. And when the players realize what these choices amounted up to, it can either create a sense of joy, horror, or some other great emotional response, or a great advantage or disadvantage for them. But at the end of the day, these choices have to be hard. It can't be, you can't have both. It's got to be the lesser of two evils.
Yep.
But I think on that note, I think I am ready to transition over to Q&A if you are.
Yeah, I guess my one final thought on hard choices is always remember that, again, the little things matter, and keeping account of when your players decide to do something that is a risk, make sure you note those down. Because those are always, and especially if you have like netrunners in the party, the netrunners don't cover their tracks all that well. Whew, you can bet the forensic netrunners that come in after they've left the facility, they're gonna know. And then all of a sudden things start getting really spicy. So always be aware of when your players have made a choice that is risky, and be prepared to pay it off, because that's exactly how you get hard choices down the road. That's how they come by your players eventually. But yeah, that's kind of my final comment on it. So with that, again, if you at this point haven't watched the beginning of the episode, highly recommend that you do, so you have the context for some of what we talked about there. Especially if you're not at the point in your campaign, or you're just trying to set up, get an idea of like, what does encounter design look like? What should I be thinking about? That's what we discussed in the first half. So again, that should be linked down below this video on my channel. But with that said, I guess let's go over to Q&A.
Yeah, we got a nice little handful of questions here, including one very important question that came from one of my good friends, here at number 5. You won't believe number 5. Stick around for all these questions. Some BuzzFeed level clickbait. Anyway. So
number 5 will shock you to your core. So much.
Oh.
Oh,
All
boy,
right.
I have food.
Oh boy, you got food?
I have shrimp.
Hello, Emmer wife. Anyway.
Diamond says hello. She says hello if you couldn't hear her.
Oh, I could. All right. So first question, I'll go ahead and take it while you take a bite there. Have you ever tried to make a hard choice happen for your players that turned into them surprising you with what you would think was their last choice? Yes. In fact, yes, I have.
As have I.
I've had a player who, for the sake of the rest of the party, decided to stick around with the explosives that they had to make sure it all went off, made sure everything went off, and told everyone else to go out ahead of them. And I told him, you know, hey, there is a strong chance that your demolitions check may fail, that you might have to be down there to manually set it off when the time comes. And he said, okay, I'll do it. And, well, sure enough, his demolitions check did pass with flying colors. He clutched with the 10 to make it happen. And it was one of those things where it's just like the fact that he was willing to stay just in case was absolutely impressive. Because at the end of the day, he really didn't have as much of a vested interest in his job compared to everyone else. He just wanted to make sure that everyone else was out and alive.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good example. I know mine goes back to, I mean, honestly, some of the ways in which Neon Inferno Season 1 kind of wrapped up was a consequence of a bunch of smaller choices that led to an ending that I was like, I knew it could happen. But when one of my players said, I want to throw a wrench in this, I was like, well, that's very interesting. I do like that a lot. So you have to understand a couple things to get this. First, early on in Neon Inferno Season 1, about half the party, well, no, the better half of the party actually died in a single gig. So this left alive exactly one player who was part of that original crew. And that new wave of edge runners, she didn't really see eye to eye with them. They were usually very violent. They weren't very methodical. They weren't careful. And everything about her character was like carefully crafting a persona to be a, you know, like as unassuming as possible to the people that were looking for her, and to always disarm people and make them think less of her. Like she's just some like ditz that doesn't pose much a threat. Meanwhile, she's smart enough to realize like, if I keep this act up, maybe one day I have a chance to actually get what I want out of my life, right? And really get freedom from the things that I've buried in my past. And crew comes into possession of a nuclear bomb. Great stuff, you know. And the nomads they were originally with were like, well, this is really dangerous. Like, we shouldn't take this. And the crew said, no, like, we're going to take this. And I know exactly where we're going to put it too. From that point on, they were on a collision course with the end of the season, right? That was the turning point. And so the player, the lone surviving player, approaches me after that, was like, I don't want them to do this. I disagree with it. I think it's a really dumb, short-sighted decision. And I can see all the bad consequences that are coming if they go through with this. So I want to work in secret to oppose it. What do I have to do? And this turned into me and her literally communicating across about the last month of the first season to like plan how she would try and heist this away. And so it literally turned into PvP before it was over, where she, along with one of the defecting nomads, tried to run, and it turned into the solo and the med tech chasing her down and pinning her. And when they only left when they were told that the rest of the group was in danger. And once they basically had the bomb secured, they ran from her. But it turned into this really like, I would not expect any player, especially one who had been around since the very beginning, to risk their life knowing how powerful some of their comrades are. I wouldn't expect that person to risk what it meant to just follow their principles. So that was really cool in a big way. And it forced hard choices to come into the narrative, because beyond just the hard choice of like, is dropping the bomb the right thing? Could there be some very serious consequences for this later? Like, there's also the added hard decision of, you know, what happens if I succeed? Have I marched the whole of the rest of that group I worked with to their deaths, right? There's that very real potential outcome there. So it was surprising, but I was like very willing to go along with it, because it's like, again, the harder the choice gets, the harder that dilemma is to resolve, the more interesting it is. And everyone at the end of the game, like, we all checked in with each other privately, and the resounding answer was, that was unbelievable how well you two pulled that off. Like, there's no way that we could have seen that coming. So like that's the other thing, is do not be afraid to take risks with your players when it comes to things like that. They can be at odds with each other. There's nothing wrong with that. Because in the last minute, it can turn into these just blow up kind of finales that really are like the highlight of a campaign.
All right. Next question. Where does the term rocker boy come from? Now, if you want like the front hand, like textbook definition of rocker boy itself, it doesn't just define, you know, male musicians. It is, in fact, the handle of a young man who during the time of Cyberpunk 2020 was known as Rocker Boy Manson, where in the UK during a show, Manson was hosting a show that had, you know, very strong anti-corp and anti-police messages to it. That at that point, the British police came upon stage and beat him to death in front of the audience. Thus, the title Rocker Boy being claimed by many future rocker boys down the road. Whether that be, you know, Johnny Silverhand, for a time Carrie Eurodyne. I wouldn't consider Carrie a rocker boy for too much after. He ended up becoming a corporate sellout. What? Am I wrong?
I think it depends on how charitable you are to Carrie in his struggle in the wake of like 2023. And like, because the thing is, I think Carrie still has that spirit in him. I think that like a lot of the like other stuff you do with Carrie in his kind of like subquest line really defines that and tells that part of him to like a huge extent. I think that like you can have high ranking rocker boys that look like corporate sellouts, but like everyone's got a, you know, he makes a fair point of like who listens unless, or I think it's Johnny actually makes this point, but it still stands. Like, who listens if all you do is preach your principles that are counter to the very people that would give you your voice, right? No record label is going to sign someone decrying their power and the influence they wield the masses. So there comes a point where you have to choose very carefully how to align your principles and morals so that you don't lose sight of yourself, but you also can be heard by enough people to carry your message forward. And I think we see Carrie play that really delicate dance, honestly, in a lot of ways, especially as we see like the way that some of the stuff with us cracks like resolves and stuff in that. So I don't discredit Carrie as a rocker boy. I think he is a great example, if anything, of like what a really high ranking rocker boy looks
Fair
like.
enough.
Yeah.
And I suppose some real life examples that's given by Artal. You have people such as Dylan or Springsteen, The Who, Elvis, even the Rolling Stones. Anyone out there that did the protest music during the era of the Vietnam and Korean Wars, like the rocker boys carry a message at the end of the day that they stand for, and they will stand for and fight for it fervently. And in the case of like rocker boys, though, in gameplay, they don't just have to be musicians. They could be cult leaders, such as for an example, people such as the likes of Jim Jones or Charles Manson. We have others such as Grifters, which is a reskin of the rocker boy, where literally you're just using your charismatic charm to get what you need to float along in life.
You're the prosperity preacher who is, you pay me this seed and it will come to you sevenfold. You will be rich beyond your dreams because God will have provided it for you as you have provided it to us, so we may serve this mission. Meanwhile, the preacher man has a mansion, several yachts, and private jets.
Rapture, for
and
example,
you're still poor.
Setting. Yep.
Right. Yep. Like that is also a high level rocker boy.
Yep.
Of a very different stripe, but a rocker boy nonetheless. So it's very it's a very dualistic kind of role. Yeah.
Or idols. Idols are
idols.
We have we like. Oh gosh, like there's many out there that look at these idols, and I bet you if these idols insisted that their fans do something, and some of those fans might be very loyal enough to go out and go do it.
Look at K-pop. I mean, if you just look at K-pop and like the way that fan culture works, it's something
no
completely. Oh man. So like, here's the thing. So I have one friend who's like big into the subculture of all that, and I love them. Like truly, they are a good friend. This is not meant to disparage them in any way, but even just seeing through their eyes, like I went with them one time when one of the groups that they really liked and that they'd show me, I'm like, yeah, the music's pretty cool. Like I dig it. They took me with them to a concert one time, and that fan culture, like I like, you can see me on stream a lot of the weeks that I'm running stuff wearing Star Set shirts. If you look close enough, I have like a solid half of the shirts I wear regularly are Star Set shirts because I love that band. How like the poster that until this week was behind me here, it's now against the wall right here. That talks about printing beefsteak. That's one of their posters. Like I love Star Set. But there is no world in which I would go out and buy like 5 versions of their albums, or like, go out of my way to like have the chance Like, spend money on a chance, not a guarantee, a chance to have like a 2-minute voice conversation with them over like FaceTime. Like, that is K-pop culture in a nutshell. Is it's full of fans that is the level on which they are idolized, right? And the sort of power that wields to them as artists and as speakers, and the even the political power that it's afforded South Korea as a whole is like insane. It is actually unbelievable. And that's what Rocker Boys are. At the highest level, they're the people that can stand in front of a whole stadium and then convince that stadium full of people to go do something incredibly reckless, dangerous, against their own self-interests, just because that Rocker Boys said, "But I love you so much, and I know that you all will do me proud." And then sick that crowd out among the masses to do some wholly, heinous thing potentially.
Johnny Silverhand at the Industrial Park right across from Arasaka headquarters in 2013. The riot that flooded the lobby and overwhelmed the Arasaka guards.
Exactly.
There's even a picture of it somewhere in the Cyberpunk RED core rulebook. I think it's like in it's in one of the stories. Now.
Yep.
Oh yes, this one. Is it safe to omit information to the crew?
Yes.
Yes. Sometimes.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
You gotta keep the surprises there. We even talked about it during these episodes today. It works. It'll fit like a glove here. If the crew knows everything leading into the situation, sure, it's gonna be a nice, easy job. Maybe they did some good work on getting all their intel.
Yep.
But all it takes is one security guard being a little bit more alert, or one cop passing by at the wrong time, and then suddenly it all goes to shit.
Well, and even less obvious than something like that, where that's like a very direct threat the players could notice or like have to deal with in real time. There's all kinds of like really subtle reasons why a fixer might not have the full picture. And some of that ambiguity is, in my opinion, what fuels Cyberpunk's like allure. It's part of what like really makes those missions pop, in my opinion, when you have a fixer who like you can tell is maybe well-intentioned, or at least they appear that way on the outside. But when something goes south, and like there's a really great example of this in a mission in the Jumpstart kit, definitely not Kansas. The corp that hires on the crew to deal with a problem is playing both sides. And the crew has to wonder if their fixer was aware of it at some point, and whether that is like something they lay at their fixer's feet, or if they solely lay it collectively at the feet of the corporation. And so it's I think you have to have elements like that if you want your story to really have value in a lot of ways as like a cyberpunk narrative, because you need your players presented with that like sort of mortal danger that comes from that uncertainty.
Like one of the things that I did, these guys were hunting down a suit this past Saturday during one of my paid sessions. And they didn't know, and the information that wasn't relayed by the client to the edge runners is that the suit isn't your typical exec. This guy happens to do wet work for corporations, and it just so happens they got this suit to a point where he was like low and out, that suddenly Trauma Team showed up. And the fact that, that information wasn't relayed, that, it didn't realize that, he was that far up, that he was, getting handed out Trauma Team passes. Like, it pissed the crew off towards the client. It pissed them off greatly. And they ended up, at a spot where the party's fixer that they report to ended up shooting the client because the fixer doesn't like people that cause the chance of ruining their zero death rate. Because this fixer prides himself on having no edge runners die under his watch so far, apparently.
Reputations are sometimes worth killing for and then covering it up. So like that is like, again, like not giving your players all the information is what a lot of gigs are predicated on. Like if you even read some of the scream sheets that are in like the core rulebook and the data pack, like there's one in the core rulebook I know of specifically, the big break.
Yes.
That is our
Smash the Box.
Smash the Box, yeah. The big break also does it to an extent, but Break the Box is specifically the one I'm thinking of, where there's a chance for an element in that adventure. Again, we're trying to stay vague to avoid spoiling you on stuff, but like an element in that adventure can turn against the players, and they will have no prior warning that it's coming, right? And that can happen. And like, I think it's important almost to like present minor instances of that to the players early on, so they understand what the stakes are when later on they're playing with some very, very dangerous, very hot fire in the form of some of these giant fixers. And one wrong move means that they die, right? Like one way or another, they end up dead. So knowing the score early on that like this is what can happen on the street sometimes is like critically important in Cyberpunk, I think, to again be true to the genre, true to a lot of the themes of it. You need those elements in there.
All right, what's your favorite build for an edge runner? Ooh. Oh goodness. I mean, for us, it's kind of what it says on the tin, Wireheads. But yeah. I suppose I think we need to be a little more creative. Outside Netrunner. Ooh.
I mean, I can even be specific within Netrunner. Because like the way that, because this is the nice thing about Red, right? Is roles only define you so far. Mm-hmm. They are not made to be this like very like, here is your pillar that you will grow within, and if you want to leave this silo, you need a multi-class. It's like none of that, right? Now, if you do choose to multi-class, there are some options for that, but because of the way that you grow your skills and stuff in Cyberpunk, it's like you kind of need to know on the onset that you want to do certain things, because if you haven't set yourself up to succeed in them, you can have shot yourself in the foot pretty hard. So that said, my favorite like build for an edge runner that I'd play is probably a Netrunner that is focused on quiet movement, right? Lots of stealth, lots of in and out without being noticed, lots of hand-to-hand combat stuff. Gun only gets drawn if it has to be. And like just being very careful, right? Like that's the big thing. Like if I can be careful as a Netrunner, that's my comfort zone.
I suppose for me, and of course, you know, with being a Netrunner, my preferred style of play is Netrunner. I mean, I like I guess just in general, I am a big fan of every balanced build, where like I don't really exceed in one particular spot too much with Netrunner. I just have to be a good Netrunner. But with Dia, she ended up becoming really good with SMGs and auto fire as one of her side things. Which honestly, I mean, I know some people are just like, why get an SMG when you can just go for an assault rifle? Because some SMGs can be hidden.
All can be hidden if you know what to do.
Yeah, well, you
So,
can
like-
also tech upgrade a heavy SMG to make it concealable.
Or you put it in a pop-up, and the pop-up makes it concealable.
Oh, would you be able to do that to a Militech Mastiff? Make it concealable.
If it's a one-handed ranged weapon.
Oh no, it's a two-handed heavy SMG.
Right.
But yeah,
that's where you start. You could tech upgrade that then. But yeah. Ultimately, I guess, like, Diamond, if you were to pick something beyond Netrunner, what would it be then? What's your favorite non-Netrunner build?
Personally, MedTech is also a pretty decent one, but not in the sense of just like, here to pull you together kind of MedTech. Actually, I might consider taking some solo ranks with Trainwreck when we finally get her in as well.
Sure.
I am a fan of medtechs who are willing to dish it out as much as they fix people up.
Sure. It's funny because like that's honestly my answer too, is medtech. But I am more like the trauma medic. So I'm more the kind who's like, I built because that's Virgil for me, and I love playing Virgil, like up and down. Like if I didn't love 8-bit and net running so much, Virgil would easily be my favorite character, because like it's just fun. It's fun to be able to support your team. It's fun to be able to like ignore some degree of damage because you're just like that good. It's cool to be able to like harvest cyberware after you've killed people. Fucked up as that might sound, like there's just a lot in the game that like medtechs get to play with that a lot of other roles just don't have easy access to, right? There's a lot of skills and stuff that medtechs utilize that like they're the only ones, in my honest opinion, who really should take paramedic. Like now you can take paramedic if you want, but it's an X2 skill that like genuinely doesn't pay off often unless you're constantly getting into trouble. So like medtechs, that's kind of their whole shtick, is like they're the thing you want to have on the team when shit hits the fan. So like that's what I would lean towards. But I lean to like, I almost build my medtech skill wise like a solo without taking any ranks in solo. Like all my ranks so far have been in medtech. Just expanding what drugs I have available, expanding how good I am at surgery, that kind of stuff. It's like I'm surgical and pharmaceutical focused. I haven't taken any like cryo systems on that character, and I've loved that because I can throw grenades, I can cut people up with a sword, I can shoot them, I can do all the shit like your typical combat focused edge runner can do. And on the other side of it, I can patch people up and make sure that people don't die. Our media has been saved no less than half a dozen times because I was there. So like our media would have died many, 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 many gigs back if I hadn't been there to help him.
I suppose one of the other builds I'm looking to explore at some point. Media, more specifically in the light of a detective or a private investigator, where it'll be much more I'm digging into the rumors, the cases, helping, get the party jobs that, like I present like the rumor in front of the fixer, like, hey, there's something good here. Are you in? You want to buy in on this one?
No, and that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
I probably the build I'm most excited to try in the future is Fixer, with a focus on like data brokering and arms dealing. Like not playing the social lines too much, but I'm like the guy that you go to when you need to get shit. Like that's kind of like I want to be the guy, right?
The guy
That would be like
everyone knows
the
a
next
guy.
build. Yeah, I'm the guy that everyone knows to get their shit, right? That's kind of like why when I built Larry as an exec, the way I built him was kind of how I want to play a fixer in the future, but without a lot of that like social aspect and like the sort of like social advantages that playing a fixer provides you. That part of it is notably absent from Larry, and were I to build a fixer, like his cool stat would be much higher. His you know, some of his tech skills and things would be probably focused on to like a secondary extent. But yeah, that's like the build I want to try.
Okay.
Because I think I could do a pretty good job of it now.
And finally, a real important question from one of my dear friends. What is the best sandwich? Italian cold cuts with salami, pastrami, capicola, tomato, lettuce, vinaigrette, light mayonnaise, a few slices of provolone cheese, all on fresh bread. I'm good. I am good.
God, that's for me. That's like that's like for me. That's actually like a genuinely difficult question to answer, because like I've had a lot of really good sandwiches in my time, and I'd say like yours sounds very good. Like that is definitely one of those that I'm like, yeah, that I could rock that and I'd be extremely happy. But I will say that, you know what, there is a type of sandwich that like no matter how things change for me, I will never, and I mean never, turn down a pastrami with Swiss on rye bread.
Oh.
There is something so good about that, and it's so fucking simple in the big way, but like Swiss and pastrami on rye with a pickle on the side and maybe some potato salad, like full Jewish deli kind of pastrami sandwich spread. That shit slaps like nothing else. So fucking good.
Thing is I don't know where to get pastrami anymore.
Yeah, like, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to locate it. Like we have a couple of I know it's a chain that is, I believe, national in the US, but Chompies.
Not up in my area.
And they're one of the places that I know I could still go to get it, and admittedly, it's not cheap. Like that, there's one of those sandwiches that definitely is like you're talking like the upper like teens for what I've described, but like it is worth it. It is very much worth it.
I guess so. Like if we were at home, if I was at home, so it's gonna be 2 slices of whole wheat toasted. All right, 2 slices of whole wheat toasted, a thin spread of mayonnaise, a touch of Thousand Isle dressing, and either the deli shaved ham or deli shaved turkey I get, and a slice of American quote unquote cheese for you folks that don't like it when I call it cheese. Yes, Sasha, I'm talking to you. I
mean, are we talking craft or are we talking deli American? Because they are different.
We're talking like the craft cheese slices.
I might have some agreement with Sasha on that. But
cheese.
Like,
but if I do have cheese slices, I love Swiss cheese and I like Colby Jack cheese. Colby Jack cheese is really good. And then also a few pickles and of course some lettuce and tomato, and just it's so good.
Probably at home, like if at home I were to make a sandwich, probably my favorite ones we would get there's like a tie in my head here. Because when I was a kid, so you have to understand, like, when I grew up, I lived in like a very multi-generational household. So I like my brother and I lived with my parents, um, and we owned this like it's supposed to be like a two-story house in Chicago, but my dad had torn out the third story, essentially what was an attic. He had like he'd what's the word um
Renovated?
basically he had renovated, yeah, thank you. He renovated the attic to be livable space. So they had a bathroom, and my parents had their bedroom up on that top floor, and it was also where my brother and I like had all our toys and like our game consoles. Like everything that we did was up on the third floor if it wasn't in our room, right? And so the first floor though was my grandmother's house. So if we wanted to visit my grandma, we'd just go downstairs. And when we moved out of the city and came out here to Arizona, she moved with us. And she literally like lived with us like right up until her dying breath. Like that was like my lived experience. So when I was a little kid, she would watch my brother and I a lot during the day, like when my parents were working, because both of them worked full-time jobs. Neither one of them was like a stay-at-home parent in that proper way. And so when they both were at work, my grandma would watch us, and she would make us this ham salad sandwich. And there's some people I know that are going to think about that and they're not going to think highly of it, but it was literally like dill pickle relish, mayo, and ham blended in a food processor so that it got down to like a spread, basically.
Yep.
And you just toast some bread, smear that on, and that was good. That was really, really, really good.
Ham salad.
So it's like yeah, and then it's like, so it's a tie between like that and we would get this like big loaves of like almost like a French bread where it's got that like nice crust to it.
Yep.
We get like a big like wide loaf of one of those, and we turn that into like a giant sub, and then we'd cut that down into smaller sandwiches and pack that with on hikes and stuff when I was like in high school, going on like camping trips with the Boy Scouts and stuff like that. And that would be like, you'd have the bread, mayo, lettuce, tomato, some usually was like ham, maybe some salami, and then either like a Swiss or provolone cheese. And that stuff after you've been hiking, I swear to God, that shit is magic. That stuff
food.
is so good.
For me, while I was in college, every once in a while, and you know, if I didn't want to go up to the upper, like over at my college, we had the upper cafeteria, which was all you can eat. If I didn't have time to go up there and sit down and eat, I go down to the lower cafeteria, which is more of a convenience style, and we had a restaurant. Apparently, it's like a chain sandwich restaurant known as Herbert and Gerbert's. And
yep.
One of the sandwiches that they made, this was like my late night, like go-to fix, is this foot-long peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Ooh.
All right. Now, some of you might be like, Dia, why would you pay for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? You can make it at home. Sure, but I have a horrid story about that. We're not going to talk about it on the podcast.
I know the story behind it. Yeah. Trust me, guys, you don't want to know that story.
But yeah,
it's better for your sanity if you don't know that story.
After like a couple cups of bourbon, I meandered my way onto campus, go get the sandwich and come back. That stuff that was like my drunk food. Was this foot-long peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And one time, my girlfriend at the time looked at me like, "Hey, can I have a bite?" And I'm like, I just full on, just big mouth over the top of it. Consumed. All right. What's up?
One final note on that. If you've never had that with, because my college cafeteria would do that with bacon every so often.
Really?
And that's oh yeah, no, that's like
Ooh.
peanut butter, grape jelly, and a couple strips of bacon on there toasted.
Ooh.
And that shit was so good.
That sounds great.
It really was good. But yeah, I think we've pretty much exhausted the Q&A with that last one. So we're in our like final 5 actual minutes, because I know we kind of started the we started our streams up about 5 minutes before going and actually starting things. So our little announcement. So I teased, if you've been watching this whole time or listening, I teased at the start of my segment way back at the beginning that we had an interview coming up. And there are some of you out there who I'm sure are aware, like, of our Jay Gray interview. Awesome. I loved that interview. It was so good getting to talk with him. So in about a week, we've got next Thursday, we're going to be sitting down with James Hunt. We're going to have a little conversation with him. So if there are community questions out there from any of our listeners, we are giving you more of a time to submit these this time. Because I realized last time we only gave you a couple days, and that was probably not a great idea. So this time we're giving you like a week to submit questions. We'll remind you again next week on Wednesday at Wireheads, if you're there live, that we are doing that the following day, and we are still accepting questions. If you have questions for James Hutt that you want us to ask, in addition to the ones we are cooking up ourselves, please submit them either in our chats, our DMs on Discord. I know there's like a survey at the end of Spotify that asks if you want to ask us any Q&A questions. You can submit it there. Or again, we do also have our email address, wireheadspod@googlegroups.com. You send us an email there, we will get it, and we can add that to the list. And we will try and ask as many questions of him as we can. We are going to be sitting down with him for 2 hours, just like with Jay Gray. So there is a very real possibility that, just like with Jay Gray, we don't get to all our questions, but we will try to ask the ones that we can and that we think are probably the most pertinent, or that he's most likely to give a good answer to. Because obviously there's like certain questions that, especially if you've been like us in the community for a while, you kind of have a feel for like what questions they will or won't answer if you ask in a particular way. But we will take all of them in. We'll ask as many as we can, and we'll try to get the spirit of the questions if it's something that we don't think it maybe be a great question the way that it's phrased.
Well,
but yeah.
On that note, from all of us here at Wireheads, to all of you at home, thank you so much. Stay safe out there. I'm Diamond Dust.
And I'm Emmerron.
And thank you for hanging out with us tonight. Until then, bye-bye.
See you guys soon. Peace.